All right, so two final points that I like to make on this commentary, today's commentary. Number one, the South African lawsuit really, I think, resurrects the African National Congress, the ANC, the governing party of South Africa, Nelson Mandela's party. The party had drifted really extremely to the right. The party had lost its bearing. So this lawsuit really resurrects it. I hope it's not a temporary issue and that it continues with progressive um, politics on a more progressive agenda going forward. Even if it's temporary, it's already a significant action. Um, and as I said, that not only brings honor to South Africa, the entire African continent, and the global South as well, and it really resurrects the spirit and essence of Nelson Mandela. As many of you recall, Mandela was pressed on his support for Fidel Castro, and he was actually asked to renounce his support for Fidel Castro, for Yasser Arafat of the PLO, Palestine Liberation Organization, as well as the leader of Libya, Muammar Gaddafi, who of course was murdered during the NATO attack on Libya in 2011. But Mandela stood his ground, and this was in 1991 during the town hall meeting at City College in New York City, which was moderated by Ted Koppel. Um, he said, any leader who just goes with the wind with public opinion polls is not a serious leader that can lead a nation state. He said he supported these individuals because they supported South Africa in the struggle against apartheid, not only with rhetoric, but with financing, with weapons, and for military training for the armed wing of the African National Congress, which is called Umkhonto we Sizwe, Spear of the Nation. So I wanted to make that point as well. And then finally, I think this intervention by South Africa is also another example of how the global South uh, has been really working to sort of remove not only, this is only one aspect of a narrative that had been monopolized by the United States. Um, but there are many other aspects of the global system, including the global economic system, that some nations of the global South have been working collectively to shifting away from U.S. monopoly. And of course, another example of that is BRICS. Originally, BRICS, of course, they comprised Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, the BRICS nations. And they were trying to discuss how to come up with alternative um, global mechanisms for trade that does not involve exclusively the US dollar and is subject to domination by the United States. And also, of course, to act collectively on some other aspects of global conversations, um, and not just allow it to be monopolized by the United States. And of course, the last meeting was in South Africa of the BRICS nations last year, and new members um, were also admitted into the organization. And BRICS now includes South Africa, Brazil, India, China, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. So I just wanted to put that intervention at the ICJ as a part of that global narrative to take monopoly away from the United States. And many of the legal commentators have actually said that South Africa has a very good chance of prevailing, and in terms of getting at least the injunction and the order for Israel to stop bombing. And of course, there's no assurance that Israel will obey the court, uh, most likely. But nonetheless, things are not the same as before the 11th of January when that case was heard at the ICJ. The United States may not respect a lot of the institutions of the global system. It respects it when it serves its interest. For example, during the attack on Libya, the U.S. relied on a United Nations resolution to justify the NATO attack and destruction of Libya. So on that occasion, they respected the United Nations. When the ICJ ruled against the United States in Nicaragua versus United States in 1986, when the U.S. supported the Contras, the U.S. mined the harbors in Managua, and the court found in favor of Nicaragua and ordered the payment of reparations. The U.S. ignored that judgment. When Nicaragua went to the United Nations Security Council to try to get it enforced and to get the reparations payment, the U.S., of course, vetoed it. And that's just another um, compelling reason why there should be a reform of the United Nations Security Council. But nonetheless, the European countries respect these international institutions a lot more than the US does. So it's going to be very problematic if you have European countries saying, oh no, we can't totally ignore the judgment of the court. Israel, we can't just give you blanket support anymore if you totally defy the ruling of the court. So obviously, the US will have to take that into consideration, number one. Number two, this is an election year in the United States. It's going to be very difficult for the Biden administration to continue just, blindly and deftly ignore the calls for a ceasefire, the calls for serious negotiations for two-state solution going into this election year. In fact, the Biden administration may actually have an opportunity to say, Israel, we want to continue giving you blanket support. But now with the ICJ ruling, this is a bit problematic, and use that as an excuse that it may be looking for to make some sort of like at least back off a little or either exit with this current policy, just blindly supporting the bombardment and the horrific killing of the civilian population of Gaza. So, sisters and brothers, that's the commentary I wanted to make today. Please feel free to share it with other comrades. And I will post it, of course, on African History Club. And I visited Grenada last year in October, the 40th anniversary commemoration of the brutal assassination of the late Maurice Bishop, the great Pan-African socialist leader of Grenada. So I will post something on that as well very soon. Thank you. Remain Pan-African.